Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Borderless Commerce. I am Hammad, and I've got AJ, the usual partner. He's recently been promoted the co-host of the Borderless Commerce. we just agreed on that part. So AJ, as usual, is here, our SME. I'll do a quick introduction of AJ, and then we've got a very special guest, Umair Munir. I'm going to do his exciting introduction too. So AJ, as you're all aware, he happens to be a growth consultant, growth guru. He's been in the industry, have worked multiple time zones, continents, geos, and he primarily is an expert in scaling your business from where you are right now to the next and the next stage. And welcome, AJ, as usual. I don't know, is welcoming you is an appropriate thing to do right now?
Not
because
really.
You are always there, right?
Not really, but hey, it's good to be here. It's good to be back.
Yeah, absolutely. And by the way, you look nice, right?
Oh, thank you. I
I
put a jacket this time.
Last round I won.
You
Remember
jacket,
that? Yeah.
I'm jacket.
Last round I won, so we have an equalizer, right?
We coordinated.
Yeah. So next time it's gonna be a bow tie or a tie or whatever, right? We need to basically really up the game.
Sure.
So, Umair, folks, Umair Munir happens to be a guru himself. He brings in over 2 decades of experience into the commerce, all things technologies. He has built teams, platforms, built whole geos, and he has been a pioneer in the things that covers the teams and the technology part of things. So I'm very happy, very excited, and very looking forward. He's been pretty slippery. We're trying to get hold of him, but finally, he's here. Umair, good to have you. How are you, sir?
Yeah, I'm good. How are you guys? Glad to be here and looking forward to our conversation today.
Absolutely. Now, there's might be some kind of a fan moments from my end, Umair, but I'm going to try to hold them in terms of the serious conversation. But if I do that, please bear with me, right? Just you being here, Umair, on this conversation, really, I want to dive into the technology. Of course, this is going to be one major thing, and then I really want to also speak about team part. And both these things are very much relevant, and AJ and I, we speak about this a lot when we basically get into the scaling part within the commerce, and that happens to be one of our favorite topic. That's borderless commerce, hence the name. How do these new emerging technology trends, number one, and this is also we are handling the new customer expectation and customer behavior part. And then when you basically go into these things like, from one market to another, there are some cultural and team aspects too. I mean, I would want to basically know, I would initially want to address this point, right? But also before getting into that, something about your background in your own words. And I'm sure even if you want to avoid this, you're going to basically touch on the question that I have put forward anyway. So just, in your own words, we would be excited and would want to learn from your experience too.
So let me spend maybe a minute or so on my background. So I come from a very heavy tech hands-on background for over 25 years. Been working across multiple continents, Europe, Middle East, Pakistan. I'm currently based in Pakistan for the last 10 years, and those were the 10 years where I jumped headfirst into e-commerce. Having built multiple B2C marketplaces from scratch in a region like Pakistan, which is very challenging, where the rails don't exist, where there's lack of expertise. So having had to build it from scratch, having had to learn things like customer service, performance marketing, because there was no one else to do it at that time. So my experience transcends both technology and business side of commerce. borderless or cross borders is something. Trade has always been borderless, right? So we
Yeah.
don't have to talk about e-commerce, but if we go back to trade, the history of the world has been written and shaped by trading, right? It's politics, and one major part of politics is trade and economics, and you can see how that's shaping up right now in the post-Trump era in the US as well, right?
Yeah.
Where
Yeah. Yeah.
the talks of tariff and
Yeah.
all of that is happening, and we're already seeing Mexico jumping in. But going back to historical context, it's always about being about trade, and when it comes to trade, borders don't matter much. Each sovereign nation likes to put those controls in, but people like things from other places. Right? We all enjoy Arabian coffee and our British sweets, or or Italian shoes, right? Uh, so that's always, and with the explosion of internet, what has that done to trade? So it's suddenly where maybe a niche leather manufacturer like Hermes was not known around the world. Now everybody knows Hermes, and
Yeah.
look at the you know, price going up like that, right?
And the recent phenomena is, I know it's technology and it's not a border thing, but deep
Yeah,
sea, that's happening,
yeah,
right? I'm going to
yeah.
basically throw into the conversation too, but this is one thing I'm
But
exploring.
but when you cannot leave China out when it comes to cross-border commerce, right?
Of course,
They
of course.
so whether it's deep sea, China is an example to follow in cross-border commerce, right? It's not only about technology. Technology plays a major part, but it's also about building that infrastructure in rails to enable that cross-border commerce, right? And that's what China has done pretty well in terms of building in-country and out-of-country infrastructure. So if you look at the logistics layer, you can get a packet, an order placed on Temu, delivered in less than a week in Europe, being shipped from China, right? That's amazing, right?
Yeah.
And at a cost, and it's in a very cost efficient way as well, right? That's not charging you $100 for shipment. It's a $30-$40 order being shipped free of cost from China. So
Yeah,
I think
that's really amazing. And
that
now if we relate this to and we of course all, if you are talking trading, China cannot be discounted from any conversation, right? But if we take China as one border, there are
hmm,
almost what 200 plus borders, right? If you
yeah.
start counting in all the countries. So, one thing that really gets into the major topic as in the whole conversation is primarily the technology and team. The technology part, you and both AJ, in many ways, are the best people. You've seen, you've covered the whole 9 yards, etc., on this topic. But how do you kind of stitch the technology part together and then the team part together too, Umair, in your experience? AJ has a very interesting take. We discussed that in the last conversation too.
Hmm.
But I wanted to basically get your angle on that too, because you have solved so many problems, scaling, geos, all those things.
So I think technology plays a part in terms of you have to look at from a barrier to entry lens. So let's maybe go back 5 years, right? If you go back 5 years, and if you wanted to build a cross-border brand, right, or you wanted to enable cross-border websites, that meant having a separate website for each country on whatever technology platform
Yeah.
that we looked at, right? And only the bigger boys, bigger players could do that, because the cost of doing that, the cost, time, effort, only made sense if you had certain amount of investment available as a DTC brand. And this it has been the progression of retail into DTC, right? So first came the big retail companies and big players, and they went online, right? Because the barrier to entry to going online were custom websites. You needed an army of developers. You needed an army of content producers. You needed all those things, which required a lot of capital. What the commoditization of technology has done over the last couple of years is that players like Shopify have certainly woken up to the international aspect of the business. So, and Shopify has this killer feature which was released, I think, 1 year ago, which is called Shopify Markets. Before Shopify Markets came into being, you needed a separate Shopify instance for each country. So if you wanted to sell, for example, um, in euros in Europe, in pounds in the UK, and in dollars in the US, right? You needed 3 websites at least. That meant 3x the cost of technology, 3x the teams required to maintain those websites, and all the pain that goes through managing the back end and the operational side of things, right? Now with Shopify Markets, if you are a Shopify Plus merchant, you can just enable Shopify Markets, and with a few clicks, you can start a new market. So it's as easy as literally a 5 to 10 minute administrative, non-technical effort, because the platform is now is international. It's global, right? And you can now accept payments. So if you're a brand and you have an entity in 3 countries, you can connect each country's payment gateway to it, each country's logistics to it, each country's you can have your pricing rules in there. So that has only been enabled a year or so ago.
And
Uh,
Umair, this is very interesting. So how are other Magentos and Salesforce Commerce and all these folks? How is generally the tech market responding to that? And then I want AJ to basically pick your thoughts on this. That in your conversation, you are a growth focused person, right? So in your conversations, AJ, how is the technology piece is becoming, I don't want to use the word barrier, but how the decision makers are inclined towards talking about this, and in the overall strategy, I mean, how do they reach out this tech issue to? Umair, sorry, I just felt I acted a little lazy, and I threw two questions to two different people, but please.
I can answer both, but anyway.
No, out of respect, AJ, I'm gonna do is, and now you've actually picked on me. I'm gonna ask this question again to you,
Please,
only,
please.
exclusive, tailored.
Go on.
yeah, so I think so. Global e-commerce platforms have always been there, Ahmad. So the point is not that they've not been there, right? You could do an SFCC global website, a very good SFCC implementation of a global website 5 years ago, but it would have costed you. So the point that I was trying to make earlier was not that it's something new, right? People have had, big brands have had country web specific websites for over a decade, right?
But
It's not.
Omer, when you mentioned, my question, sorry, was when you said that they introduced markets, Shopify,
Yeah.
it kind of basically gives an impression that they took it seriously, right, by introducing something.
Yeah.
So
So,
that must be a need of the markets, of course. And then my question is that, the other competitors, the other players, were they focusing like Shopify recently basically triggered this focus, or they have it, since the beginning of the times, or how are they responding to that?
so I think I have not seen much response from them. They've always had global offerings. It's a different ICP, right? So when you talk about different platform, every platform is a different ICP.
Makes
So
sense,
if you
yes.
talk about an SFCC brand, it has a certain GMV value where SFCC makes sense for a brand to get
Yeah,
into.
bigger players, bigger
Bigger
volume.
players of certain size, certain SKU content catalog, certain SKU catalog makes sense, certain segments, certain markets. And there's the time to market thing as well, right? So just to, and where Shopify is coming from. So if, for example, three of us decide to launch an international brand today, right? And we just have $10,000 as a starting point. We have merchandise. We have say, we are making some really fancy phone covers, right? Like some truck art phone covers out of it, right? And we want to launch truckartsphoncovers.com today, right? Which sells across 20 countries, ships from multiple warehouses, accepts payment. So yeah, the legal stuff we'll have to do, but we can enable that fairly quickly using Shopify Markets. Whereas this conversation 5 years ago would have been, do you have $250,000 in the bank to support the tech implementation, licensing implementation of it? I'm not saying that, there's no space for SFC. There's space for players like SFCC, SAP, Hybris, some of the bigger boys. But that space is for certain size of brands. It's made DTC very easy to get into. So that's where the technology part comes in, is that and even in Shopify there was an implementation, but that meant having 4 Shopify websites. And each came with its own cost of paying Shopify every month, maintaining that website, making sure stock levels are synced across, all those sort of complexities, right? So I think where Shopify has come in is they've realized that global e-commerce is a phenomena. They've listened to their customers who've had that multiple websites and who are having issues, and creating support tickets and talking to account management teams and speaking about the difficulties they're having maintaining 4 different websites to sell the same merchandise, right, at different prices using different legal entities.
Understood. Yeah.
And suddenly, they've simplified that. And to date, I have not seen any effort from other players. I follow SFCC quite closely. Magento/Adobe, I don't follow that much now. So I can at least say that from a SFCC has a global implementation path, and they're just sticking to that. And I think that's a strategy that they understand very well. And we're not nobody to say it's the right or wrong strategy, but I can at least say that Shopify Markets had made it very easy for any size merchant to
And I
go
think,
global.
to be fair, Shopify is bringing, it's making the whole thing more democratized. And this is where Shopify really wins, I think, in terms of the other players. So I want to bring the conversation to AJ now. So AJ, now this aspect of scalability, using the tech part, whenever the growth conversation is happening with you, right? Because a general impression about the growth is that this person is gonna spend certain X amount of dollars to bring in X amount of dollars, right? In this case, do the founders or the decision makers, they're worried about the bottlenecks being created by the technology or lack of technology, or lack of information around that? Does that really become part of the conversation at your level of discussion?
I think people doing things in silos. I think if we look at Amazon and we look at eBay, they're still very much a siloed business. So they have their US entity, they have their UK entity, they have their France entity, and they're all operating from different processes, different account structures, different policies, etc. I think what we have the ability now to do is to say, right, to do the expansion part, all we need to do is we need to look at the technology that we have, make sure the technology that we have is robust, and then be able to plug in what we need. So whether that's a 3PL in New Jersey, or a UK-based company, right, who can handle shipping and returns, whether that's hiring an ads agency in LA to do some creatives for us. And so I think the last 5 years, it's been four and a half years since COVID really took hold. I think what people have realised in the last 4 years is that actually there's democratization of talent, right? In terms of people actually buying knowledge from wherever they want to buy it from. And what I mean by that is I think 10 years ago it was very much the ethos of you hired the local marketing agency, you hired the local 3PL company, you hired the local web dev team. Whereas now it's, well, who understands what I'm trying to do and where are they and how can I work with them productively? And so that could mean, right, well, we hire a web dev team in Lahore, Pakistan, we hire a software integrator in the next city, we then use a 3PL network that has 3PLs across multiple different countries, right, so it's become a 4PL, right? We then hire a remote marketing team who are running different sides of campaign under a CMO who understands the strategic element of what we're trying to achieve as a business. And therefore you have this much more broader sense of skills and this more broader sense of application versus what would have been a very siloed and very, well, we have to have boots on the ground in our HQ. And I think that has allowed us to be able to hire the best fit people for their assignment and not to have to worry about whether we have somebody locally who can get up to speed with what we're trying to do. I can give you a couple of different examples. So a couple of weeks ago I did a session on Etsy for a client of mine, right? Could she have hired somebody locally to do Etsy? Probably. Would they have given her the exact same results that I can, being an e-commerce specialist? I doubt it, right? I'm not saying that to make me sound more important than I am, right? But the reality is I've got experience that a lot of local people probably don't have because they're probably not dealing with these challenges and these opportunities day after day, right? That said, if she was a small plumbing business that came to me and said, right, we want to market in our local, I wouldn't have a clue because that's just not my expertise, right? And so for me, it's about trying to solve, whatever the existential problem is for the client or for that for the outcome that they're trying to get towards, right? I can give you another example from the last couple of weeks. A couple of Sundays ago, I got a text message from a client in the Middle East who said, we're thinking about raising some money, what do you think? And we talked through what they're trying to do, and hopefully I was able to give them some insights based on where they're trying to expand to. They're trying to get more into Western markets in the Middle East, and how that might work into the capital structure, in terms of what their P&L would look like, in terms of what they need to do, marketing spend, etc. And it's all stuff that I have vast experience in that they don't, right? They're the experts at designing the product that they do. They're the expert at understanding how to grow a business in the Middle East. They don't have any perspective into the US and UK market because it's not their bread and butter. I do, right? And so that's what I think the democratization of knowledge has been the last 5 years. And so the other thing that I think about is 2 years ago I went to Wimbledon. Everyone knows I like to play tennis, right? And I remember getting off a bus at Earl's Court and seeing a bus go past Earl's Court tube station that says Big Commerce now open or something like that, right? I can't remember the exact slogan. But 10 years ago, Big Commerce were not advertising, Magento were not advertising, Shopify were not this cool brand, right? And it's only happened in the last couple of years that they've, the reason I think Shopify is good is that they've solved a lot of the existential problems that people like me a decade ago were having with Magento. So I had to get my own hosting. I had to then deal with support for Magento. They had to understand the programming language for PHP for Magento. I had to eat right. And me being me, myself and I, running the business, it was 16-hour days, 7 days a week, right? It was not fun, right?
Yeah.
Whereas now, 10 years later, I can go to Shopify and I can just go, right, I want a store that looks like X, that has this functionality that allows me to do drag in this, that, and the other. Allow me to set shipping policies for these 20 countries. and I can do that in a couple of days, right? And I can do that without having to do endless updates that may crash the site, trying to find third-party plugins that also may have some adverse effect. And that's why I think, right, and then being able to customize and be able to localize what I'm doing. And I think that's why platforms like BigCommerce and like Shopify as a native element on their servers have really solved international commerce in a way that just wasn't possible 10 years ago, right? And so 10 years ago I was selling to Russia, I was selling to China, I was selling to UK, US, etc, 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 right? 12 different countries. But it was a ball ache, right? It was an absolute pain in the backside. And one thing that me and Umair have discussed at length in the last couple of weeks is how do we solve some of these softer issues, i.e. tax, imports, etc., in a way that Shopify have solved a lot of these heavy lifting elements for small businesses that just wasn't available 5 years ago, right? Or we wouldn't think about how to solve. And I think the decline in Magento, for example, right, in the last 7 years, is part in fact that they've been sold off, but also is part in fact that you hire a developer and they're not cheap. You need to then get the infrastructure right. You then need to figure out if you're doing in-store, you need to figure out a POS system or a POS system, right? You then need to find out some third-party software that then links into like your phone system, your warehouse system. You then need to have all the soft skills to be able to train your staff on doing this. And it is not as simple as it is now with Shopify. I can give you one more example. And I'll shut up.
I'm enjoying the conversation.
Thank you. I'll hear your voice later, sir. About 18 months ago, a friend of mine came to me and said to me, I've got a client who's running a $4 million outdoors business. I wrote about this on LinkedIn a couple of weeks ago. And I said, they do realize it's going to cost them $500,000 and take 18 months for them to integrate e-commerce, right? Because they're not a small business. They're doing 4 million. They probably have a couple of thousand, 3, 4, 5,000 SKUs. And therefore, the actual logistical element of integrating e-com into their business is so high because they can't just slap a Shopify store together over a weekend and be up and running. They have to make sure that their EPOS system integrates whatever system they use. They have to be using some inventory system. They need to have enough staff. They need to train the staff. They need to be tracking stock in store and online, and then we do all the marketing and all the fulfillment. So it's that end. Clearly, Shopify or BigCommerce or some of these other native platforms help reduce a lot of that burden, right, at that high end. But they're still dealing with a lot of these existential problems that why the three of us get paid so much to do these projects, right? But the strategic element of things with that client is saying, well, you can do it, but it's going to be a $500,000 18-month program of works, and is that where you want to be spending that capital? Whereas you can be spending that capital actually growing, right? Being strategic and saying, right, we are a small independent local business, right? And we're going to grow our local independent footprint by doing lots of different activities that kind of codify and specify what we're doing locally, over and above trying to take market share from Dick's Sporting Goods or Target or Walmart or some of these big players who've already figured out how to solve these problems. I think with Walmart they probably solved e-commerce 25, 30 years ago, right? Yeah. Because they've always been at the forefront of technology. But they've also got 150,000 employees across the world. So they've got the manpower to make it happen. And therefore it's a lot less of a challenge. So yeah, I think in conclusion, I do think Shopify have made international commerce far easier. I do think in terms of growth as well, it's made it far easier. I think there's more opportunities to hire wherever, and there's also more opportunities to outsource your logistics or your warehousing to people that can integrate with Shopify within an afternoon, within hours, that then make scaling far easier than it was, say, 5-10 years ago.
Yeah. And you know, gents, you have made me really run this disclaimer now. We weren't paid by Shopify. I really need to run this disclaimer. And Shopify people, if you're listening, please, you know, we're open to conversation.
Sponsorship.
Yeah. So, you know, I want to discuss this at a different tangent, right, with a recent experience. So, I mean, with the headline being that when does technological problem or any of these conversation comes into the growth conversation, and it's an experience way, right? I am not, of course, privy of the conversation that this growth person who was my contact, and you know, I just met him at a networking session, and you know, we started talking, right? And you know, we told that person that how big and great you know, we are with Shopify. Of course, you know, I was working with an organization which had quite a pedigree in those terms. So he brought me into a conversation, and again, you know, I happen to be a growth, sales, pre-sales, marketing kind of a guy, right? I'm not as an SME as you gents are, but he was a growth consultant, and his growth targets were kind of stalled because the technological challenges. And what were those technological challenges? These folks now, it's an amazing tea brand. They have been into Dragon Den, you know, amazing marketing muscle. Oprah endorsed their tea, etc., etc. Of course, I cannot take the brand's name, but now what happens is that you know, when we zoom in to the tech part, what happened was, it's very interesting that the wife and husband, and the husband basically started doing the Shopify on his own, right? So this third-party tool, third-party app is quarreling with the other third-party app, and you know, then they've got the funding maybe or whatever, they decided to invest. They basically got up to Shopify Plus, and then, you know, it was a whole mess. And the growth guy, he was kind of, you know, I mean, of course, he did not use these words or did not cry in front of me at least, but I could tell that his targets were stalled because the technology and the technological components, they were just kept quarreling with each other, right? So someone comes in from, you know, someone like me, New Jersey, we had someone from Dubai, we had someone from Lahore, all these folks, they just come in, someone was from Karachi too, they just, you know, come in, help from CRO angle, help from the technological angle, and, you know, the growth person's target really started to meet. We were just there as, you know, whatever needs to be delivered to the growth person, right? So this was my recent experience. So this is very, very, very interesting. Now, I want to shift gears now. I want to come to the point where how the customer behavior is changing, right? The customer behavior is a conversation which has always been part of the conversation, right? Every couple of years. Now, I'll give you an example. So I use an application which is called, you know, it's a Bank of America, and it has it has a assistant. That name slipped off. So let's call it, you know, X, right? So I go and ChatGPT started coming in, and I was using it a lot, and I started to use it like, you know, hey X, can you tell me what's my balance, and also tell me what is my sorting code I need to send money to internationally, for example. These were the exact words, right? And the X said, what are you talking about, man? And so me as a consumer was at a different tangent altogether. And now I think since 2022, the conversations and the technological acceleration has really shifted the behavior of these consumer customers. How are the technology basically evolving? Umair, I want to basically come to you on this. How is technology evolving keeping that super speed of consumer behavior now changing, right? Addressing the TikTokers, the Gen Z, getting rich, of course, they're getting into that age segment when they are affluent, etc. How is that happening in those terms?
So I think technology and human behavior changes as we evolve as a species, right? Again, going back to when internet started, everybody needed to have a desktop with a monitor, with some kind of internet connectivity, usually via modem. And that started with as hardware progressed and networks progressed, it started becoming more. It started becoming cheaper, it started becoming faster, it started becoming easier. Right? Interfaces started becoming more natural, and that evolution is ongoing. Right? So you went from a very basic text-based system, which was the Usenet, to Netscape, to Internet Explorer, to Chrome, to mobile apps, and now AI, right? So your again your shopping moved from all of this, right? So your shopping habits moved along, and so did the e-commerce sellers, merchant side, right? So merchants who grew up, like, say you said TikTok, right? Just imagine in the past 3 or 4 weeks what happened with TikTok. Trump,
That's a good
one of
example.
the first messages before taking over was, I will make sure TikTok doesn't go offline.
Yeah.
Was maybe it was a PR stunt, but just imagine in our lifetime, have we seen anything like that? The leader of the free world tweeting, saying, I won't let. He passed an order saying, you keep TikTok alive for the next 3 weeks, nobody will come bug you. I gave you my assurance, right? And the reason was, there's billions and billions of e-commerce business being done by US merchants on TikTok. And it was not for the love of TikTok or for the love of or politics. It was a political move protecting US interests at the
Yeah,
end of the day.
And
economically.
consumer behavior
Consumer
that
behavior, right?
basically influence everything.
So if you look at, again, going to his inauguration, where he introduced his youngest son and saying he knows the young voter,
Yeah,
right?
and he took me to Joe Rogan and all those things, right? Yeah,
Exactly,
which
and
is
and
interesting.
also his granddaughter, right? So he took the two of the youngest members of his family and pointed them out. And this is an old 70-plus-year-old president
Yeah,
saying,
absolutely.
making all those, because he wants to. That's his voter, right? That's his base. Youngsters, that's the future of any country, right? It's the younger generation. And their behavior has changed, right? So it has moved from a browser based, moving to an app based, to a social commerce based, to maybe now an AI agent based conversation, right? So look at Perplexity. You can go and ask Perplexity, shop for me, right? I want, say I was coming for this podcast and I wanted to look as sharp as you and AJ. I could have gone to Perplexity and say, I'm going to a podcast with some e-commerce gurus. Please, I want a costume for that. And please go and shop for me. Here's $200. This is going to happen. This is coming.
So,
This
so,
is,
so, Umar, you should take AJ's screenshot right now and just, put it somewhere in the chat with an AI agent. Tell,
yeah.
make me as good looking as AJ. I'm
Please,
gonna do
please,
that.
please.
So I'm while you guys were, so I was playing around on my browser, right? So I'm just gonna put my screen up, right? And again, no, we're not connected to Perplexity or Shopify, but I just want to show you this, right? So I just gave Perplexity a prompt. I want to build a high-end home theater system where I spell theater wrong as well, right? And here you go, right? It's given me a video which I can watch, right? It's given me enough, and now it's given me related. So I no longer have to go to Google to do this, right? So I can do this, and I don't think I have perplexity shopping in my region enabled. But in the US, if you were to do this, you could even go and ask it to go buy stuff for you, right? So this is where the natural progression of, and again, this could be done using voice. It's going to become as natural. I won't even have to type this anymore, right? So I can give it a voice prompt. I want a home theater system. Budget is $2,000. Please recommend. Or I can even say, go ahead and buy it for me, order it for me. And there's companies that are building the secure payment rails for it, where I can secure my credit card to make sure it doesn't get misused. So all of this is coming very soon.
You
It's
also have
already
payment
here,
platforms
man.
like Google Wallet and Apple Pay,
Yeah.
which are solving some of those problems already, right? Sorry.
So,
Yeah.
no. It's a very exciting time to be
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
this.
Umair, now this is also in a way our dilemma, right? Three of us associated professionally with this industry. And let me explain how am I saying that. Now, these models, let's talk about the AI models, LLMs, all these fancy tools which are at our disposal now happen to be at the disposal of the consumer too, right? And when we say that the consumer is smart, now the conversation is really now becoming from the customer is always right, because what used to happen was that the customer basically gets to a certain point, the technology and the tools and the fancy, the big brains, what they were doing, they used to follow that wherever that customer was at. Now, the same tools that we are supposed to now leverage, those tools are also available for the consumer too, right? Now that smartness, that the industry cannot build this technology straight away like this, which it was capable to do some time back. Now this is kind of a dilemma that I found myself in, and as the example that I've given you of the Bank of America AI agent thing, I was more smarter than the app, right? And it was a banking solution. I could think that it was a year back. It's a regulatory kind of a thing. It could take time for them to change anything. But in the D2C, in the brands world, this is really a struggling point, and I think the industry does not seem to be talking a lot on this part. That's my read on that, and this is a dilemma that I see. Whoever wants to, what are your thoughts, Umair? As a person, I mean, I do not expect that you and I, we would have, or even the industry would have any solution as of today, but I'm not hearing that in a lot of conversations. Is that just me, AJ and Umair, or is that something that you kind of feel too?
I think a lot of this stuff is very removed from everyday consumers. I think therefore it becomes a buzzword conversation. And I think we as technologists, in the loose sense of that term, don't have to explain why it matters to consumers because they get it, but have to explain how it all makes the shopping experience or the journey to discover it even better. And I think, if we look at healthcare, I know the three of us have talked quite a bit about healthcare behind the scenes. I think the future of doctors is not going to be them diagnosing what ailment you have, but acting as a backstop to what the AI has deduced that you have, based on it asking you a series of questions, and therefore the AI can understand at a much greater level whether you are, what disease you have and how it kind of figures out. and therefore doctors become more prescriptive and more intelligence-led, right? I'm working with a tiny client here in the UK who's a dentist, right? They're trying to do some e-commerce within their dentistry. That's long and short of it. They are forecasting, and these are guys who've been in dentistry now for 20, 30 years. They're forecasting the future of dentistry is actually the nurses doing a lot of the dentistry work. I know Umair's wife is a dentist, so I don't want to step on her toes here. But a lot of the dentistry type stuff is being done by nurses, driven by AI checklists, driven by technology, allowing dentists to become more specialised and more specific in the types of procedures they get drawn into. The thing I always come back to is, can we use technology in a way that is laborious for us humans, but still is overseen and managed by humans, or allows us to truncate the process in a way that means that we can get better results quicker? I can give you an example. So, the majority of my work is trying to figure out how to take somebody's vision and build it into a plan. And how to understand like what markets we should be targeting, the consumers, etc., etc., etc. Right and I can go do a lot of the research myself, but then I will go to AI and say, right, I'm working with X type of client. I'm thinking about doing these sorts of programmatic steps to get them to the end result. What do you think? How would you let's have a conversation about that. And a great example, so a couple of months ago, a friend of mine who runs a marketing agency in Tennessee, she was approached by a potential client who bought a business that was making exercise bikes. He sold all the exercise bikes, he sold the factory, he sold all the machinery, and now he has the spare parts left. And he was going, well, I think there's about $1 million or whatever, let's say $1 million, right? There's $1 million in spare parts that he had to sell, right? And he had 12 months before the property got transferred to the new owner, where he had the warehousing, right, for nothing. I went to AI and I said to AI, right, I'm thinking about, can we hire a sales guy to do it on a commission? Can we try and market it? Can we go to a liquidator? Can we sell stuff on eBay? And I got Gemini. I got Gemini to rank my different options based on time to cash, ease of outcome, specificity of outcome, right? All of these sorts of things that would take me hours to think about, and it does it in seconds, right? That said, if my second prompt was, well, I've got this client that does X, and we're trying to solve this problem, and it gave me garbage, right? So you have to be highly intelligent to use it appropriately, and to get an output that actually makes some sort of sense, right? But it can do a lot of the heavy lifting that would take you hours to do, and therefore it's about them saying to that particular friend of mine, saying to her, well, actually, this is what AI has generated for me. Here's how you can discuss it more meaningfully and more intentionally with your potential client to maybe get you the outcome that they want, right? And by the way, in that situation, the worst outcome was to hire a marketing agency, because they're not in the business of sales, they're in the business of generating demand. You still need something to close that business, right? Mm-hmm. Whereas the best outcome was to hire an on-commission salesperson who could go out and make those calls, door knock, generate the activity to get the sales happening, and that was going to be the much easier route to actually liquidate that stock, right? And the second best option was to find a liquidator, just have done with it, even though they would give you pennies on the dollar, right? But that was still a viable option. And so again, it's about how you use technology. I'm sure Umair would agree with me on this. It's about if you have an intelligent, sentient being actually using the technology, you're going to get an outcome. Than if you have somebody that's frustrated or angry or doesn't understand how the technology can be utilised to get the outcome they want to. And that's why I think you need to have some human supervision. You need to have some human input and you also need to have the backstop of having a human that is available if everything goes wrong, or if somebody actually wants to talk to a human. And so that's what I think.
So, Umair, on this topic generally, is this really a problem that I was referring to? I mean, consumer a lot more smarter than the businesses are, or the folks like us are.
So in any technology trend or in any trend, you've got your early adapters, so you have that curve, right? It takes time for anything to become mainstream, and it will take time. So for these AI shopping, so there'll be early adapters like people like us, who are technologists, who like playing with stuff, who like taking risks, who don't mind if we lose that $200 on some merchandise which we didn't want. Uh, but with time, you will see some of this become mainstream, and I say some, right? Not everything will work. Technologies will fail, companies will fail, a lot of AI companies will fail. You're already seeing the deep seek phenomena that we mentioned earlier. That's got like there's again too much money being pumped into AI right now, with not the right ROI conversations happening. But over time, you will see things maturing, some winners come out, some technology, and the thing that really makes me happy is open source is kind of winning, right? With DeepSeek, it's not for me, it's not China that's winning, it's open source that won
Yeah, absolutely.
against closed source companies. I've always been an open source proponent, and I like companies that use open source to make money. Again, Shopify is actually one of the companies that's built on Ruby on Rails, right? So it's one of the open source web platforms. So coming back to this, so AI will have its use cases, but you also mentioned so human in the loop. I don't think you can take humans out of the loop. So this whole the other side of the conversation where humans will lose jobs and they'll be taken out of the loop, and I think humans will just have to move up the value chain, right? Where, say, just going back to, say, cross-border commerce, right? Where a human right now is manually filling in custom forms of 20 countries, and me and AJ were discussing this use case, or doing tax compliance, sales tax or VAT compliances across all the markets that you sell to. So an automated system, I'm not even going to call it an AI system, an automated system. So I think the word AI is being used to do a lot of automation which was not being done. Automation is not something new, right? Machines came, they started automating from transport to machinery to manufacturing, right? To anything and everything, right? And now,
And Umar, I'm sorry I'm interrupting just quickly. 5 years ago, we used to market it as process optimization, right? And under every process
RPA, right? So,
optimization,
for example,
yeah,
robotic. But what has changed, right? So what has changed between 5 years now and 5 years ago and now is that your compute is a lot cheaper, right? You have machine vision being matured to a level where you can detect things very accurately. You have speech detection, you have synthetic speech, which looks very real. So all of that technology is now available, right? So the concepts are always there, right? So now what is changing is that there's more interfaces available to do that automation. It's still automation, it's still that process. It's
yeah.
still it's still that workflow, right?
When we used to unwrap the process optimization, there used to be RPA inside, right?
Yes,
And
yes.
now when we are unwrapping the process optimization, it's mostly AI and machine learning. Maybe that's the more. But at
I
the end
wouldn't
of the
even.
day,
I just think that this whole AI conversation has brought it to the top of mind, right? So AI process. optimization was boring stuff, right? There was
Yeah.
a team sitting in a corner doing process optimization or workflow automation, right? Boards never used to. Now board is saying, "Oh, we need to use AI." This whole AI revolution has enabled the board conversations to happen top level. Then that's coming to the CIO, CTO, or CEO saying, "You need to start using AI." Under the wraps, it's still an automated system, right?
I was at an event which was organized by Princeton University. I live, very near to Princeton University now. The
He likes to
title
get into the
was
conversations when he can.
okay.
I
So,
live different.
and I've seen Einstein's house as well. So anyway, I'm not gonna brag about it. So the topic of that event, the conference was AI in life sciences, right? This was as simple as that. And now there were very, heavy hitters from industry. A senior vice president from Johnson Johnson. I think someone from Eli Lilly was there, and all the big pharma people. So, and when they were talking about something as apparently complex as drug discovery, design, and development, the whole process of drug development was around, and they were talking about AI. They did not speak about the use cases per se. And then, when it was a question and answer session, I asked them. And because, it was like, it might be me, I'm not picking that up, right? It was an hour and a half conversation maybe. So, and I asked them, what you're saying, that's all process optimization. And I understand process optimization is very cool and, it's going to save lives, it's going to, help go to market quicker for a drug, which means it will be cheaper, would save more lives, but where is the AI use case, right? The use case. And they agreed with that. At the end, it's process optimization, right? If we take 5 years to basically bring a drug out, we would want to basically do that in 2 years now, right? So at the end, it's all about that. I agree with that it will be automation, it is RPA, it is now AI on the hindsight, but this is what it is, right? And this is what industry needs, I think, as early use cases. And probably, when you say about the sci-fi kind of frankly, a sci-fi kind of a use case that we have seen recently, frankly, that's just ChatGPT. I mean, it's other than that, these AI bots, you and I, all three of us, we have seen that. Einstein, the AI module from Salesforce, that's been out there since 2016, right? And it just, been getting smarter and smarter. So no real use cases, I agree to that. My main thing primarily is that probably the consumer is getting more smarter as compared to the speed of technological advancement in our part of the world, as in, in our industry that we work in. But it could be an early adopter kind of a thing. We might have a bias, people like us, we might be early adopters and we might be someone, interact more with the early adopters. We got to see. So I'm agreeing with that. This is kind of a thing that I did not think in this angle, right? It could be an early adopter situation.
And also the fact that the who is your buyer in the next 5 years, right? So you also have to see who's going to buy stuff, right? For example, the whole retail phenomena is shifting in terms of who the buyer. The younger buyer has a very different way of interacting with these technologies than me and you will ever have, right? So I'll give you an example of my 8-year-old. So when ChatGPT's the voice thing came, where you can talk to ChatGPT 4 or 5 months ago, one day I was just sitting down with my daughter and we were getting bored. So I thought showing that to her, and I had used that, and I think, oh, I'm an early adapter, and I'm a power user, and I'm a technologist, and but the way she used it was very natural to her because she's had a Alexa in her room for a while, so she talks to her Alexa. She's had an iPad since she was 3 years old, so she knows who Siri is.
City.
Yes. Although they're not very good examples of personal assistants. But then she started talking to the chat GPT voice agent, right? And she started talking about Pokemons with him or with it, right? And the conversation went quite deep. It was like two friends talking to each other. That's unnatural to us. So we have to understand she is the consumer in the next. She is currently a consumer because we give her money to buy stuff, right? So she's currently a consumer. She will be, when she starts earning her own money, she's the consumer of the future. So when we say that EU and just look at our parents' generation, right? They have a hard time using smartphones, iPads, using WhatsApp, and but they like using dialing the phone and talking to each other, right? But I'm just saying that with the newer generation coming in, these interfaces will come natural to them. Like touch, touch interface was not natural to people our age. We had to learn it, right? To our kids, touch is natural. They can swipe right, left, up, zoom. All these gestures are natural. It's part of their muscle memory. So I feel that as time progresses and these new consumers come in, you'll have to have a multimodal interface to commerce, right? And that multimodality is not only your browser or your app. It's going to become much more. It's going to become voice. It's going to become an AI. It's going to be agents. It's going to it's going to become a truly multimodal world where and the use cases will come. I'm not worried about the use cases, right? I think we are trying to solve too much. Let's take a small problem. Let's solve that. Like, for example, let's take a B2C taxation problem or a B2C, logistics supply chain problem and just solve that or automate that more effectively. If we use AI with it, yes. So but one of the things that people don't realize about, and I don't want this to become an AI podcast, but is the ability, what has changed in the last couple of years. AI has been there since the 50s or the 60s, right? When the first papers were written about machine learning and deep learning and all of that. But what has changed is the ability of the machines to have that context. So where do humans, and that's why some of the tasks AI will be much cheaper or a better ROI than a human. Like, for example, let's take a customer service agent for an e-commerce brand. So if Hammad is a customer of, say, a marketplace, and Hammad might have been I've been an Amazon customer since 1999. So Amazon has order history of me since 1999. So 26 years of history, right? So if I'm talking to a customer service human agent, it will take that person a long time to go through my history or summarize it. But I can, just to augment that agent, I can give all of that to an AI agent to prompt that human agent saying, Umair likes electronics, is a good customer, does not return, likes Amazon, gives good rating. Here's the summary.
That's a good example.
So that those use cases are in play internally. They're not being exposed to us because they're not consumer-facing use cases. But customer service it's been like, there's a lot of like job losses and a lot of like, but you cannot take the human out of the loop. Because when you take the human out of the loop, where some companies have gone, oh, total AI customer service, disaster. It's almost the same disaster when call centers started moving abroad initially. Right? It's a similar disaster of that magnitude if you're going to go to AI for commerce brands or any brands, and you're just going I've seen customer service of certain companies where you go into a loop where you cannot get to a human, right? It's similar
So,
to IVR loops and all of those loops, right?
so Umair, if I am to conclude this, right, and this also dovetails into something that what is the emerging technology, and the emerging technology is the AI, and how does this basically relate to the consumer, and rather than businesses or folks like us getting nervous that, oh, what's the trend would be, we just pick up one use case, one problem, and solve it, right? And this is it, and this is how we move ahead.
Yeah.
So this is a very good, I mean, actionable thought. AJ, I want to quickly come to you, right? And folks, this is a very interesting conversation. I really enjoyed it.
We'll have to do part two.
This is the longest borderless that we had, Umair. You so it was really exciting. Now, AJ, tell me if we kind of I want to get your angle to it, right? The technology trends. I mean, what exactly in terms of the growth part again? And I'm going to keep coming to the growth part. At the end, the decision makers, they are just concerned. Well, that's their biggest pain point, right? Not the technology. Technology is a support kind of a function, etc. I mean, what should be leveraged, number one, and what should not be worried about, right? So that is one thing. I am nervous. Other people would be nervous too. So you as a growth person who has expertise in enabling in terms of the dollar numbers from one scale to another, what would your take on that?
I think don't worry about the change in technology, the pace, because I think in the last decade we've seen a dramatic change in terms of how fast we're changing technology. 10 years ago the biggest thing was Alexa and Siri. Nobody is talking about that. Google has now changed from Google Assistant to Gemini on their phones. Right?
Google Glasses was a thing, right?
And Google
the
Glasses
VR was a thing.
Exactly. And also 10 years ago Netflix was still sending out physical discs to people. They were just coming on the ramp. They're ramping off that, right?
Yeah.
And so I wouldn't worry about the technology change. I would worry about how you can adapt what you're doing, so you're using technology more effectively. Whether that's automation, whether that's AI, whether that's better process implementation, better design. Which again, I would not say is technology, but it is technological. To fundamentally grow what you're doing in a more strategic way. I think technology has the power to dilute your activities and your actions because it can allow you to be faster than you have capacity for. And therefore I think it's more about, can we adapt what we're already doing to have some technological experience in there to allow our staff and allow our team to be more thoughtful and thought-led and less reactionary. Right, but be able to do more with less. And I think the reality is, I think there will be job losses, and I do think there will be people that who will get left behind. And I think that the way not to get left behind, and this is the thing that I've been saying for 3 years now, is to understand what the limitations of technology are and how you can use that to better equip yourself at your job and to become more valuable, because the people who are more valuable are the people who are more strategic thinkers, are more process driven, less emotionally driven, right? I think there will always be space for those types of people. There'll be less and less space for people that are dogmatic or task driven. And so I'd be really, really worried if you were running SEO campaigns and you were running the same SEO campaigns for the last 10 years, right? Because I think the nature of what we're doing has changed dramatically, right? Just an example. That said, I think it all comes back to, this is my nice little bow on the top, I think it all comes back to the customer experience. So I don't think technology will ever change having a human having empathy for that customer. But I think the technology, as Umair was saying, can guide us and advise us on how to shape the customer experience to be even greater, even better, right, than it is at the moment, right? And I'll just give you one example. When I go to my favourite hotel, I like to sit. They've got this massive bank of windows, and I like to sit on one of the tables that is against the windows, right? You get a view. You get people walking past. It's a 5-star hotel. It's very luxurious, and so I'll always ask, "Can I sit in one of those tables?" And usually they'll say, "Yeah, we can move things around. Yeah, we can make it happen," right? If only they were using AI to anticipate that, because they went onto the system and they said they leave a note on the system that says, "Mr. Saunders always asked for a table with a window view. Can you remember that for next time?" And so when I turn up next time, the system already has allocated me the table by right. So, and the reason I go to that again, it's a 5-star hotel, and they like to take the mick out of me for being harsh and being exclusive. But the reason I go there is the experience is so great. I don't have to think about things. I don't have to think about, are they going to put the glass down on the table? Are they going to use the right cutlery? Are they going to not know the menu? Are they going to, and I always try and ask them a question that's going to trip them up, just to keep them on their toes. I don't always, but it's that whole kind of thing of, can we use technology to really enhance customer experience in a way that we're not doing it now, and a way that we get away from siloed experience. Again, I can give you another really, really quick example. I sold something years ago to a Spanish customer in using eBay ES, and eBay UK were like, "Well, that's a Spanish issue. You have to phone Spain." So I phoned Spain, and nobody on their team spoke English. But because they're a silent company, right, and they got different divisions doing different things, it was a hot potato. It was, who can we pass this hot potato to? And it would be much better if they had the processes to deal with these sorts of things, allowing the customer service agent to say, "Well, I can see it's outside the bounds of what my experience and my remit, but the system is saying I need to go talk to so and so in customer success because they can make it work on the P&L." Because that's what it comes down to, is who's taking the loss on the P&L, right? And so I think that's what technology will allow us to do, and that's what I'm really, really excited about. And the other thing with speech to text and all these software that we've had for a very long time, I'm really excited to see how that then gets integrated. So we've had the first generation of Alexas and Google Assistants and Siris that has allowed us to do things like say, "Hey Siri, order me toast, order me a toaster, right, next time," right? And it will do that, right? But I think where we can get to is we can integrate home automation systems into these sorts of systems in a much more sophisticated way than we've got at the moment, which then allows us to say, right, I want to have a romantic dinner. What can I cook? What ingredients do I have in the fridge? How long will that take me? And and being my partner's getting back at 7 p.m. Can you make sure you dim the lights and turn the heating up? Right?
Yeah.
And the technology is there to enable us to do all this really, really sophisticated things. We're just not embracing it. So I think that's kind of the next step.
Okay, that is a good insight, folks. I mean, I want to basically just...
You want to stay for the next 3 hours so you can talk.
No, this, I don't want to make it a Joe Rogan kind of a thing. That is 2.5 hours with Mark Zuckerberg, I think. Or probably more. I think it kind of touched 3 hours. But anyway, so I think just to summing up quickly in one sentence what Umair has said, that just focus on the use cases, select one short, small problem and solve that. And this is for the decision makers, for brands. And what you are saying is that, keep sticking to what you have in front of you, and maybe just see that normal, if you've been doing something for a very long time, that's not gonna stick, right? You have to find ways of growing, and this is for everyone who is associated to a business or to a technology space. in essence, what you're saying is that everyone basically watch this podcast and the others that we will be doing at least an hour a day, right? Make time for that.
100%.
Yes,
You're
I'm
wrong with
gonna.
us.
I'll find a way to basically do some social posts around that, right? Just passing a message on. So with that, Umair, special thanks to you. Just sharing amazing inputs into the history, the present, and future in many ways, right? And that's very useful for us, for our audience. AJ, thank you very much for your time and amazing. I love your examples, right? And we're going to keep seeing that. I'll give you an example and then comes two more. They're always better than the previous one. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a good day and good rest of the week. Thank you.